Merry Crimbus, Merry Christmas. We're doing another Nate Light late night night guard in my mouth drunken video here. We got some blue / purple lighting. It is purple, but it's appearing on my phone camera as blue. I know that I've kind of abandoned this channel for a bit, and I haven't forgotten about it at all. I've been thinking about it a lot. I've had ideas for videos, but like some of them are like, in terms of what I want to talk about, I'm like, do I want to just like shit that out? Do I want to just like say it? You know? And then it eventually just winds up being like, okay, well, this is supposed to be a side channel. This is supposed to be something that I can just shit things out. It's the whole point, right? It's supposed to be something where I can just give my thoughts and then just have them show up and be in the world and not have to treat these as each individual gigantic projects that I have to overthink and overcomplicate. But that in of itself, right? That's an idea worth talking about or exploring, right? That's a thing that I'm talking about right now that provides some sort of, I guess, relatability to some people that may or may not feel the same way about things. I think about Caden in Synecdoche, New York, and how his project is ever so complicated and endlessly growing. Damn, I would have loved to have finished Synecdoche Part 6 this year, but moving fucked that up. I'm really gonna try hard and get that done soon. What does soon mean? I can't tell you. I'm sorry. Anyway, the last video on this channel was me, I think much more drunkenly, talking about the ethics of depicting in any way someone jerking off while driving. And what's funny is, like, I've kind of reflected on that. I've reflected on the comments that people have sent in that video, and I'm actually kind of proud of my audience, knowing that the majority of the responses seem to be like, what, it's fiction, who cares, it doesn't matter. Which is, honestly, I think that's the best response to that, is like, yeah, it is fiction, it doesn't matter. I still have that level of discomfort. I still have the exact same discomfort that I expressed earlier. But that's just a part of being human, right? Is either having some sort of, you could say maybe even inconsistency with the rest of my beliefs, or having some sort of bias, or having some sort of sensitivity to like a certain thing. The reason why that makes me uncomfortable, and it still does in the same way, is because it feels just so much more grounded and real towards what is being depicted, right? Like, me jerking off to Scar from the Lion King, it's like, that is so far removed from reality, it like literally does not exist. I'm not thinking of a real lion when I'm doing it. You know, even if it was just like nameless cartoon lion that only exists in fiction, it's like, it's not like a real thing I'm thinking of, right? It's something that is just so far removed from anything that exists in reality at all, that I consider it to be like a different category. Whereas like the whole jerking off while driving thing, what I imagine, and I'm not these people that do that, what I imagine is like the thrill of the actual thrill of doing that sort of thing is like a part of the sexual excitement, right? So if I were to imagine what makes people horny about, you know, you see a comic of like, ooh, but I hope we don't get caught. Someone's like peeking through the door, like, ooh, I hope we don't get caught. Like, that's a 1-to-1 ratio of what exists in real life, is like a scenario, and the sexual heightened reality of that scenario of like, I hope I don't get caught, right? I feel like and again, I'm not a person that is attracted to this, but from what I can tell, that same sort of, or at least similar sort of, um, excitement over like the thrill of what you're doing, or like the like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I'm gonna do it right now. And then that also added onto, in the previous video I mentioned, like, oh yeah, there's just some like pieces of shit that obviously do this, and I'm just like pissed. I'm pissed knowing that there's people that do that, and I guess maybe I went too far in terms of like, I didn't blame anybody that depicted that in a fictional way, but I still very much said like, I feel like that's irresponsible. Um, and I think might even went as far as to say it's immoral. Maybe I'll take back immoral. Maybe irresponsible I'll stick with. However, however, regardless, even though I do feel this way, I've reflected on it, and um, at the very least, you know, been still proud of myself for being a type of person where I can go like, oh, I have a bias. I have a thing that makes me uncomfortable. I have a thing that other people think is something that is absolutely harmless, that I'm just having some sort of like very mild moral panic over. But at no point, at no point am I trying to restrict other people from doing that thing. At no point am I suggesting, oh, that should be illegal. Or at no point would I, like, if there was somebody like that was their political uh, position, like, we're going to ban this. Still, nowhere even fucking near that, right? I'm just like, oh, there's something that I'm just expressing makes me uncomfortable. And so it's interesting. I think it's even more valuable to have that type of thing where it's like, oh, I know this makes me uncomfortable, in the same way that, you know, porn in general would make some people uncomfortable, or like homosexuality, or like furry shit, or like lolly or whatever. I know that there's something that I can experience that's like, oh shit, this makes me uncomfortable, and I'm like worried about the repercussions of it. But at no point am I like, this should be illegal. And so I do feel proud of myself for not restraining myself from having that perspective, but from just not naturally having it. Just being like, oh yeah, no, never did it even cross my mind. And I do feel proud of having an audience, and I know that you're the real ones in here because nobody knows about this fucking channel. I do feel proud about having like, you know, people in my audience that are like, no, it's fiction, whatever, who cares, right? Which is the, I think the moral position, and the one that you know, if we're going to be consistent as human beings, in order to not ostracize or hurt people, in order to have the least real world repercussions, I think that that's the position that makes the most sense to take. Damn, I feel like I was going to talk about something different, and then I just got caught on this like whole oh wait, yeah, I'm trying to remember the title of the video. It definitely was not going to be jerking off while driving part 2. I got to thinking about the arbitrary nature of sexuality and fear based on sexuality. And I think that the way that we exist as human beings, and the intense, absolutely intense emotional fear, very fear driven attitudes that we have towards sex. The word sex shouldn't be like this fucking demon word. Like, it's literally just, it's a function, right? It's a function of your body. It's a function of reproduction. Not to say it's nothing, not to say that there's no emotions attached to it, right? But, you know, we could also easily put this much of a stigma and ritual and emotional attachment towards things like eating, right? Which is another bodily function, something that you do for survival. But I guess with eating, you do it much more often, that it's, it kind of loses its mystical prowess, right? There's some people who never have sex their entire lives. There's some people who have sex every day of their lives, and there's people in between. Um, and we put so much social weight and emotional weight on whether or not someone is having sex. And it makes sense in terms of emotions because your body's supposed to be emotional over it. Otherwise, if you weren't, if you didn't think it was like a big thing, like the human race, this species wouldn't continue on. Like, obviously, it's an evolutionary thing. Um, Imagine someone who's never eaten the first 20 years of their lives, like how much they would be insecure about what the concept of eating is. Like, if you didn't need to eat to survive, right? But it was just a thing that, like, oh yeah, everybody's doing it, or like, oh yeah, you're supposed to do it. Imagine how much that would fuck with your head. And that happens to people that don't have sex, or that do have too much sex, or that, like, some people that are sex addicts or whatever. Like, there's so much of a spectrum of how healthily or unhealthily you can tackle something that is literally just a bodily function. And again, not to undignify it, and again, not to desexualize it even. But I think that the current state of how we view sex in society as a whole is at a point of irrational fear and irrational stigma and irrational taboo. And if people were a bit more chill and less scared and less fucking it started and less caveman brained, or however you want to call it, about the concept of sex, I think the world would be a better place. Even in countries that are very conservative, or cultures that are very conservative, or societies or communities that are very conservative minded about sex, they're all having sex. They're all having sex. They're just like pretending they're not, which is just like it's way much more annoying. It's way much more annoying where it's like, oh yeah, they're all doing a lot of the same shit, but they're just pretending they're not. Like, statistically. It's so fucking weird. It's so fucking weird, and I think that I'm worse off having grown up as a person that was entirely confused about the idea of sex and it existing in society, and me having to, like, essentially figure all this shit out on my own with no real help. And even though sex education existed, it didn't really prepare me for anything real or tangible, or realistic in general. It was just like some, like, basic, health related shit. But I never really understood things in, like, a real way. And I'm not saying have sex with kids, obviously. I hope people are so fucking weird. Whenever you start talking about sex education, it's always, you want to rape the kids, you want to rape the kids. Which is, I guess, why people never talk about these things, is because everybody just calls you a pedophile if you want to have, like, any honest, serious reflection on your own life, right? Or growing up, or anything, I guess. Everybody's a fucking pedophile. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know if that's a complete thought. I don't know if that's everything I wanted to say, but Merry Christmas. You got another fucking horse brains video. Imagine a world where, like, because right now we live in a world where if somebody shows themselves naked, an adult shows themselves naked, they can be terrified about that, thinking that they'll lose their job. Like, someone will send that to somebody and then be like, oh, you're fired. Or, like, they're canceled or something over it. For being naked, everybody's naked. Everybody's naked. Everybody has a naked body. This isn't like something that, like, oh, you should be ashamed for having one. No, everybody has one. Everybody has a butthole. right? Except for people with like stomas or something. Um, it, it's so fucking weird how we stigmatize and taboo these natural, very human things, right? Like in another world, in another culture, and I mean, these do exist. Um, there's a good chunk of people where like they just consider sex to be casual, right? And I think that like in a more objective sense, not saying that I know true objectivity, but if I were to try and imagine a more objective sense of like how human beings would view sex and sexuality without this immense sort of like social pressure and uh, stigmatism, I would imagine that sex would just be more casual, you know? And we've kind of just arbitrarily decided that it's not, that there should be fear and like intense emotion built and based around it when it's really just like we're creating it. You know, you like certain words, right? Like the R word right now. I could give other examples, but it might get clipped inappropriately if I even say the name of the word that without saying it. There's certain words in society where like all of those are entirely socially constructed. Not saying the history never happened with those words. Not saying that there isn't any reason why historically people would feel weird about them, but you remove them from that history, you remove them from that, and all you have is just a sound that's coming out of your mouth, right? All you have is just a word. Even the definition of the word removed from history is not the same as with that historic context and connotation. And that same thing exists with the attitudes that we have around sex and the attitudes that we have around the idea of anything taboo, especially things for the sake of being taboo. Um, it's not magic. It's not magic. We're all just kind of collectively deciding that something is a big deal and therefore reinforcing that it is a big deal because we're all collectively deciding it. Like, sex is a fucking big deal because we've decided it is. And that's the only real reason, other than the fact that it is, like, a hugely emotional thing connected to our brains, and a small percentage of the population can't handle it in any sort of rational way. Like you have from incels to rapists, or from nymphos to I don't want to say asexuals, because I don't know if that's like an extreme. That's just kind of not playing the game. But um, there's people all over the spectrum, but we exist in a society of people that we're so close in American society to just outright shaming people for the concept of sexuality in general. We're so close to that. And there's like culture pushing back against that. There's art pushing back against that. Um, and I don't think all art should be hypersexualized, and you can still call something trashy and like WAP or like whatever. It's like, not my thing. I wish I could get monetized. I just wish it was consistent. The fucking new Twitch meta is like, should I pull out my dick? I'm not gonna test that shit. Um. Anyway, at the end of the day, everybody's got a butthole. Who gives a shit? Merry Christmas, everybody. Good night.